Well, today I'm going to be running you through the presentation that me and my partners Kenny Muhart and Edward Cujo, myself being Josh Marchese, went through on Scholar Day. And on Scholar Day we discussed our below-knee amputation interim prosthetic socket. So I'm going to start off by giving you a little bit of background about the amputation that we are working with, the objective that we had for our semester, as well as the criteria that we considered when coming up with our final design, the final design of our project, the budget that went into creating the prototype of our project, and then go into the testing and results with our prototype, and then the next steps that we plan on taking in the future. So, the amputation we're working with is a transtibial amputation. This is just an amputation below the knee between the tibia and fibia. And treatment for this surgery begins within about 2 days, and the goals of the treatment are to get the patient comfortable with walking again, as well as shape the amputated area. And the interim prosthetic that we are working on designing deals with this first goal of treatment, which is to get the patient comfortable with walking again after their surgery. And so for patients that are dependent on, amputee patients that are dependent on Medicare, they used to be provided with an interim and definitive prosthetic. Definitive being your more final or permanent prosthetic. But due to recent changes in Medicare, they have cut funding for interim prosthetics, leaving patients to spend $5,000 to $7,000 on this interim prosthetic. Many of them cannot afford this cost, leaving them at the risk of improper physical therapy and bound to a wheelchair for the rest of their lives. So our solution to this is to create a low-cost interim prosthetic socket kit, which will have interchangeable parts, adaptable parts that we will provide to physical therapy facilities. At these physical therapy facilities, they will be able to use this kit to construct an interim prosthetic for each patient in their own physical therapy sessions. And then afterwards, the components can be taken out, cleaned, and used with each individual patient. So our objectives for this year for our design project were to, like I said, design an interim prosthetic socket kit that was adaptable and could be worked with multiple patients. After that, we wanted to build a prosthetic socket prototype, and we didn't want to completely design the kit. We just wanted to focus in on the socket. We felt like that was the most important part to design a prototype of this semester, as well as hopefully by the end of the semester submit an abstract to the Summer Biomechanics, Bioengineering, and Biotransport Conference in Tucson, Arizona. So when considering our prototype, we came up with some design constraints. We wanted to make sure that the weight of the prosthetic socket was not too overbearing, and overall we wanted to make sure that when designing the kit and coming up with the overall prototype that the average weight was about 4 pounds. We had a cost and budget of about $1,000, so we had those kinds of constraints to work with, as well as we wanted to make sure that the socket was adaptable and could fit any patient, like I mentioned earlier. And also we had a constraint of time. We had till the end of the semester to build it, so we had from the beginning of last semester to now to design and construct our prototype and go through testing. So this is our below-knee socket kit that we came up with the design for. As you can see, there are 3 sockets ranging from small to large, these ranging in circumferences from 36 centimeters to 44 centimeters, hopefully hitting the majority of the socket ranges that we are hoping, or residual limb sizes that we are hoping to get. Along with this, we included a wide range of pylon sizes, foot to pylon adapters, socket to pylon adapters, and then different feet sizes, left and right feet sizes, ranging from size 7 to size 13 of men's. But for this semester, we focused on designing the medium socket prototype. So when designing our socket, we had to consider leg versatility. And so our design is an additive design, which means we're just trying to add components to properly fit your limb and properly take into account pressure sensitive and pressure tolerant areas of the limb. And so what are these pressure sensitive and pressure tolerant areas of the limb? Well, as you can see on the right, we have a diagram of the front and back of a residual limb. The portions in red are the pressure sensitive areas, and the portions in green are the pressure tolerant areas. And these pressure tolerant areas are the lateral flat aspect, the medial tibial flare, and the popliteal fossa. And so these are areas that we can apply pressure to when we are trying to fit the prosthetic to the person's leg. And the red areas, the pressure sensitive areas, are areas that we need to make sure we take away pressure or apply very little pressure to, because this can harm in the healing of the residual limb after surgery. So this is our additive socket design. We had to take into account things like suspension. So this is how well the prosthetic held onto the residual limb. And as a solution to this, we came up with a cuff strap idea made out of Velcro and Dacron material. This is the kind of material that you use for a seat belt. And this allows for adjustability in the thickness of the leg, and so we can secure it to the leg once the socket is on. We had medical bladders that we use to act as a true fit just being how the leg is triangulated in the socket. And so these medical bladders can be inflated and deflated depending on how big the residual limb was within the socket. We had rigid pads within attached to the medical bladders. These would help secure a fit within the socket in addition to the medical bladders. And then we also have a gel liner around the residual limb to help with to keep the possibility of infection from spreading from socket to socket, making it easier to clean the socket as well. So this is our prototype of our socket. We had to build. This is a patellar cuff strap that we designed that you can see in the top right, and then the gel liner that is on the residual limb, as well as the medical bladders that are inside the socket, and the foam in the bottom that we use for height adjustment. So this height adjustment of the limb is something that we had to take into account, because limbs are of different sizes, so we need to find some way to compensate for that. So what we did was we added foam to the bottom of the socket, and to take into account this leg difference. And so the average below knee amputation height is between like 11 to 17 centimeters. So we felt it was safe to have a maximum height of about 24 centimeters in our socket, so that we have a nice wide range of any maximum length that we would see. And obviously, like I said, we would use foam to decrease this height. So with our budget, this is a kind of a layout of how we spent the money for our prosthetic socket. As you can see, TrueFit was the higher of what we spent our money on, and this was because of a lot of iterations to how we wanted the residual limb to fit within the leg. But as you can see, we're still well under budget. We've only spent around $560 and still have $440 remaining. So once we had finally built our prototype, it was now time to test it. And we found a patient who was awesome. Her name, we called her Miss Cindy. She was 60 years of age, so she fit around in our age range or target age range of Medicare-dependent patients. The cause of her amputation was a chronic infection of the bone, and her date of amputation was April of 2015. So when testing her with our prototype, we had some set criteria that we wanted to measure her on, and these criteria would then be ranked on a scale of 1 to 5 by the patient after we ran her through a standard physical therapy session. And these criteria were the fit and finish of the socket, like how well she fit into the socket, and when she was moving in it, did she move a lot up and down or side to side within the socket, as well as her comfort within the socket, how she felt personally within the socket. Was the comfort of the socket comparable to the prosthetic that she had at the moment? Her posture within the socket, we wanted to make sure that she wasn't favoring her fully healthy leg. We want her to feel comfortable spreading her weight between both the socket and the leg. And then also her security within the leg. If she didn't feel secure, then she probably would not want to use the socket, so we had to evaluate that, as well as her overall perception of the socket itself. We wanted to make sure that when she was in the socket, she approved of just her overall perception of it. So if this loads, I guess it's not going to load for me. Oh, there we go. All right. So this, as you can see here, this is the testing phase that we went through of our project. Right now, we are just trying to secure the socket to the patient, and kind of after this, we're going to inflate, deflate the bladders to make sure that we are getting the right fit to the residual limb. We were fortunate enough to have the help of the physical therapy department. Dr. Megan Salvatore and Dr. Matthew Volansky were able to help us out in this session because we're not really qualified to work with a patient. But what we had her do is those boxes that you see Dr. Salvatore moving away, we had her stand on those boxes and see how she weight bared and how she felt within the socket while she was standing on it, and then we kind of took her off of it so we could properly evaluate the socket itself. So this is how she weighed our socket afterwards on our scale of 1 to 5. She felt like the socket comfort was very comparable to her definitive prosthetic, and then the majority of the rest were 4s, and then she felt the lowest was security, because as we were testing, as she full weight bared in the socket, she started to sink down in it, and this lowered her personal security rating, and it is something that we need to think about in future iterations. So when we're considering redesign for this project, after testing, we want to consider things like the sinking of her and her residual limb. How are we going to adapt for that? And this can be fixed through more lateral stability and making sure that we're pushing her limb up a little bit more so that her patellar tendon can rest on the front of the prosthetic. Other redesign considerations are the cuff strap. We want to make sure that the strap is able to stay on at all times. We worked with some kind of double-sided Velcro at first, but this created a whole bunch of problems because the Velcro wasn't staying as well as we wanted. The original idea was adaptability, but as we were testing, we realized that it wasn't the most secure method of securing her limb to the prosthetic. We want to make sure that we have a shorter liner next time. Her liner was kind of getting in the way, so we want to make sure we have shorter liner to properly be able to reach the valves within the socket. We want to come up with more rigid foam within the socket. The foam that we had, as she applied pressure, she sank down too much, so by incorporating more rigid foam, we're hoping that she doesn't sink down as much within the socket. And then we also want to find a way to make the valves more easily accessible within the socket. This could probably be solved by drilling holes in the side of the socket and having the valves come out the side instead of having to reach within the socket to adjust the air within the valves. So, next steps. We were accepted to the SV3 conference, which is amazing. We're going to give a presentation June 21st through the 24th on that weekend. And the theme of this conference is growth development, remodeling, and repair. And we're going to give a podium presentation at this conference, 10 to 12 minutes, with about 3 minutes of Q&A. And we're really excited to represent Mount Union at this conference, and yeah, very honored. So, in conclusion, we're currently working on our presentation for our SV3 conference, and we're also reiterating on our design to perfect it for this conference. We want to reevaluate the medical bladders within the socket, as well as make the redesign changes that we felt were necessary. And like we said, we are at a current project cost of $560, and we have $450 remaining to make these reiterations. We would like to thank Dr. Matthew Volansky, Dr. Megan Salvatore, Gabe Gulia of Yankee Bionics, Miss Cindy, the patient that we worked with, as well as the marketing department. Thank you. Are there any questions?